Exploring Jamaica's coastlines, rights, challenges, and future prospects for its people. Examining Jamaica's ongoing struggle for public beach access and land rights.
Always, my brother. Here's what I only have one thing to show you, and the stage is yours. You can talk to the Jamaican people about beaches, access, land rights, about how they're treating Rattigan for the election, anything you want to talk about. But let me just, Kevin, where we put the forgive me, you showed me, but you know,
it's the diaspora. It's in the diaspora.
Diaspora? Okay, all right, hold on. Let me close this. Diaspora manifesto, this one. All right, let me just see one thing. Okay, is this 2025? Yeah, one second. I was just here.
Page 52.
Yeah, but I don't see it. It's not, I don't see it on this 50, 51. Okay, here it is. Now take a look at this. All right, what I'm going to show you now is the government's manifesto 2025 that they put out just before the election. I'm going to show you a section on beaches. I'm going to read it, and my reading is consider it the opening of the floodgates for you to just like a stream or a river, just come through it and take over. All right, here we go, folks. Here we go. And 52, and just to make sure people, so you know where I'm reading from. There it is. I choose Jamaica, the next chapter. That this is the manifesto of 2025. Now let's go to page 52. What page is this? 87. 2 more. 5. Stay with me. Oh, hey, look, school bus, dollar bus. All right. Bim and bam, big up on yourself, man. We're supposed to call you because we're supposed to get some buses, you know. We're supposed to get some buses. So now listen out for my phone call. All right. I'm still too far down. Too far down. This must be it right here. 55. All right, let's go. 55. 52. All right, here it is. Let me bring it over and let me big it up. Big it up. Here it is. Says here, guaranteeing public beach access for all Jamaicans. You know what it didn't say? It didn't say guarantee all beach access to all Jamaicans. It just says guarantee public beach access. So you see how narrow the language is. And it says, we will continue to work with the UDC to upgrade and or develop more. So that what you're saying, they don't have enough. More public beaches with clean, safe facilities, lifeguards, and activities for families. Now, here is the promise. Here's a promise. Our promise. Every parish, all 14 parish, or them want to turn Portmore into a parish at 15. Every parish must have at least one world-class, quote unquote, what that mean? We don't know, public beach. We will finalize and implement the beach access policy. You notice they didn't say anything about the 1957 Act, the Beach Access Act. They didn't talk about that. The beach access policy, and develop 20 public beach parks, including major upgrades to Negril, Boston, Paggy, and Priory Beach Parks, ensuring fair and enjoyable shoreline access for all Jamaicans. The floodgates are open, my brother.
Well, greetings, to the Rattigan family. Yeah.
Do you need me to leave this up?
I don't even know where to start. You know.
Do you want me to leave it up, or do you want me to leave it up? Do you want me to leave it up?
Leave it right there. Leave it right there. You know, we have to put some things into context here, you know, because we don't even know, you know what I mean, where the lies them stop and where the truth start, you know. And where we start is really the experience of the Jamaican, right? You know, in terms of the lack of rights to land, because without the rights to land, you do not have the rights to beaches. And there has never been any kind of serious, you know, reparative justice, you know, since emancipation as it relates to the rights of the Jamaican people to land. So we come on your program and we do this, you know, in other spaces to let the Jamaican people know, you know, it's 494 miles around, right? 494 miles of coastline, and the Jamaican population, you know, has less than 1% of that coastline, which is beaches accessible, right? We cannot access most of the coastline. So when we see these kind of, information put up about 20 public beach, 494 mile, 20 public beach park, talking about upgrading, beach parks, right, ensuring fair and enjoyable shoreline access. You know, we are in this position because we have colonial legislation, right, and the complicity of our government to continue to what? To displace the Jamaican people, to dispossess the Jamaican people, and to disempower them from coastal resources, you know what I mean, ripping us from continuing our cultural tradition, you know, arming, you know, the modernization, expansion of fishing to recreational users. You know what I mean? It's just a continuation of the whole colonial logic where you exploit on the resources of the land and the people suffer. So these, you know, promise, I mean, is something that I don't know, you know, if the Jamaican people still buying into political promise that has been offered to us, you know, since, you know, 1962, and most of it has been immaterial, right, as it relates to the rights of our. So this missed the whole point of the struggle, or what the Jamaican people has asking for and advocating for since the 50s. That they have been pushed out, squeezed out, displaced, you know what I mean, violated, abused, you know, I mean, in terms of when they try to access beach and use the sea. Because it's long time, it happened long time, you know, them are ball out from in the 50s to say the injustices and beer, and we need to do something about it. And them write this law to say they're going to do something about it, and then the government turn around and weaponize the Beach Control Act of 1956 against the Jamaica, right? That preference now the elite, right? It preferred the rich man, the big man, right? It's a whole, you know, onslaught of capitalism at the coastline. And that's what that means. We will not get what, you know, governments say, because what governments say is not equitable. It's not fair and it's not just, because what we want are rights. Would like the legislation, the laws to change that guarantees Jamaican rights. And we're talking about that means you don't need no permission to go there. You can freely access. We can look at an example of Harmony and, you know, Park in Montego Bay. These places open 9 to 5. I don't really know which Jamaican use beaches 9 to 5. It's the same thing that they're trying in the Blue Lagoon right now with the access by permission is a 9 to 5 operation. So you treat this the coastal spaces, you treat parks, if you call them these things, as if they are, you know, a business where you regulate when people go there and how people go there. That's not been our experience. That's not how we use beaches. That's not how we use the sea, right, for recreation or for commerce. So this kind of approach that the government is planning about these beach parks, they're just, you know, areas of continued, right? They are areas of segregation, right? And that's what they are doing, because they're trying to say, we'll create these beaches for our quote unquote Jamaicans. And so therefore you now won't access the beach that tourists use, right? And I've gotten into conversation with government ministers or ex-government ministers who talk about, you know, beaches for tourists and beaches for, you know, Jamaican. And that is a segregation. And that is not something that is permissible or allowed under the Constitution of Jamaica. So the approach that they're taking towards saying that they're going to increase the access to the coastline is one that is rooted in a segregation policy, where you're creating separate beach domains for the Jamaican people. And then you're saying that these are the exclusive domains, right, that are supported under the Beach Control Act of 1956 through beach license, are spaces that the Jamaican people will be excluded from, and will not be able to freely access. And that is fundamental, right? Fundamental, a violation of the Constitution as it relates to freedom of movement, right? As it relates to discrimination, you know, not being in certain spaces because you are who you are, right? And we cannot. So, as you know, what we are asked is the full repeal and the replacement of the Beach Control Act of 1956 to be replaced by legislation that guarantees us unfettered rights, right? Fundamental rights to beaches, rivers, right? So we will have now a new relationship with the coast. This is very important on many levels. It's important on the level of just continuing our cultural practice of just using beaches as we have always. We go there when we want to go there, we play our ball, go enjoy ourselves and our families, swim with therapy, with spirituality, and, absolutely, commerce that we practice in this space. We're fishing, we're vending, we're harvesting for seaweeds, all these things that we use the beach for. We'd like to continue to do that and not be excluded from these spaces to build hotel. And we're asking, pushing, advocating, and mobilizing the Jamaican people really to help in getting this legislation removed from the sets of Jamaican laws. Because until we remove the Beach Control Act of 1956, the government will have a piece of tool, this piece of legislation, to rely to say that they're not breaking the law, because here is it, and it allows we the government to issue beach license, which there are 366 of those right now across the country, given to most of the hotels and villas, guest house owners, have these, beachfront economic spaces, right? And they have all kinds of rules, right? They would not be able to do that. They would not be able to quote Section 4 that says you have no right in or over the foreshore or the floor of the sea. They cannot claim that. And if we remove these barrier rights, we have to remove these. And I think it's important that overs and under that are violating your, and until you remember, then we are at a disadvantage, right? We are being violated, right? We're being discriminated, relations to using beaches. And so we have to really push back. And we just come out of Melissa, and I want to touch back on the Black River situation, But one of the issues that Melissa highlights is the need really to conserve coastal forests that are on the coastline of Jamaica, that are important for many things. Important to control the rise in sea level, important to prevent flooding to coastal towns. These forests, normally contains rich mangroves that are important for, fish hatcheries, important for just proper, ecosystem management there in the natural way, right? As to how nature, basically, replenishes its cycles. These things help, the release of stormwater, control of stormwater. So coastal forests are very, very, important buffers against a mitigating impact of climate change. And the way we build in Jamaica, right? Because as we know it, we said it many times, it's 35% of GDP that is based on the coastline. So the coastline of Jamaica is the driver of the economy of Jamaica. Make about it, right? The line. That 494 mile where you see, and right now most of the tourism infrastructure is concentrated on the North Coast. It is the major of the economy. What they're doing is the coast to build that opens up the entire nation, because most Jamaicans live within 5 miles of the sea. Whether it is, right? That this now is opening of risk, which we see much of it also play. Issues there that we must address. So not only that, we are asked for rights to go there, we are asked that the rights of conservation in the space, that we don't take coastal forests down to build these metrics, right? That now is creating other issues for us as people, right? So this is another push about end, right? That we have to make sure that we remove Beach Control Act of 56 in order to really usher in this era of rights for Jamaicans and rights for environment. Can't happen with a legislation like this in place that gives the minister, just immense power. That his word is unquestionably law, right? And that him can do anything he want to do in this space here. These kind of things are not, democratic, ideals. They are not good governance. Everything about the Beach Control Act is just wrong. and everything that it manifests in terms of plantation, where we do see the space, of course, is used like the plantation, exploitation of the workers, them, Jamaica has been on and talk about, the need for reform, into labor laws that are practiced on our coastline that exploit our people, degradation of the environment to build these hotels, exclusion of the people, right? All of the money that's making that space never really coming out of the country or leave the country, the untenable work condition of the workers, right? All Jamaicans are treated if they venture onto beaches that are used by tourism. The whole thing, is packaged as tourism. And this is supported by the beach control. So if we circle back to look at how, the current administration is not, beach and access and rights, it's not addressing the fundamental, right, around how the model is constructed at the coastline to represent, to look like, right, to really manifest the same characteristic and the same experience, lived experience of enslaved Africans and plantation. That is what the descendants of enslaved Africans are experiencing in these regions. And our natural is used, right? And we are excluded from those coastal land. So our land rights are not being realized despite, the fight against chattel slavery, the fight that our ancestors, actually engaged in, that leads to, So the whole thing is laid in colonial logic. And so when the executive class come now and says 10 beaches across the country, right? Or we could build a box. They're continuing the colony. That's what meant. As to how a colonial society is ordered, and me I tell you what is going to happen here, not me I consult with the Jamaican say, would you like the entire 494 miles around the country to be, and I'm going to tell you how you could benefit if it's constructed that way in terms of the social value of the coastline, to the health of the nation, the environmental justice value, the economic value, it is constructed as a land. The country will forever benefit from anything that goes on in this space. Right now, when we sell 29 acres of land, 10 acres of land, 14 acres of coastal land, we lose that value. Most of these coastal land owned by these hotels are registries. JaBBEM have had, just lots of challenges to really find some of the landowners because the properties are registered in foreign countries. A lot of them are registered in St. Lucia, and you have to, figure out how to own them, right? And so you're transferring the west country to the elite, to the big man. That one. There's a really big gap that investigative journalism piece need to look very carefully. Both Jamaican elites, right, multinational corporation, big capitalist ventures are buying up coastal land in Jamaica, registering them in corporation and entity in other countries, exploiting Jamaican workers, degrading environment, this is us, and I treat you like a second-class citizen. It's massive rip-off, transfer of wealth, violation, exclusion, dispossession. They are mad coastline. And we're crying out saying that the political class of no, because from 56 when they put this in, we have had some changes in from GLP, PMP, GLP, PMP, 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 GLP, GLP. The political class now have no interest in the empowerment of the, right? In economic justice, right? They don't. If they did, then why would 35% of the economy not controlled by people? Which by rezoning the coastline, making the whole thing public land, the government have every law and tool on its in its grasp to do that. Land acquisition of 1947, then can take back the whole thing. It will not be no constitutional, violations, right? That overcome. Because even the Beach Control Act says you can do so in the interest of the public. The tools are there. It's just the political willingness has never been there because the Jamaican political class is controlled by big business and elite, and they are also part of it because many politicians sitting in parliament, at one point, we go name that controls beachlands, own beachlands, whether personally or through their companies, live there, encroach on the foreshore, control beach license, right? That arms the Jamaican people and are creating plans and barrier for further displacement. That is what's unfolding at the coastline. It's not just so people here we talk is we're existence. We're fighting for our economic empowerment. We're fighting for survival because the removal of coastal forests exposes all Jamaica to the impact of this whole climate disaster that's coming.
Let me jump in, Doc. Yes, we are trying to and I'd like you to address it because you're at the forefront of change. Tell the people JaBBEM is doing. But before you do that, let me just say, big up all the crew from Cape Town to Pretoria to Durban. I know Mubonga, Caesar is watching and watching keenly. I see the text messages. Big up on yourself. Big up on yourself. Glad to have you guys join us. Hopefully one day we'll be able to do a program like this for South Africa because South Africa has some serious problems too, and they mirror Jamaica's problems. So we'll get to that in the fullness of time. Doc, yes, tell us now, what is JaBBEM? What are you doing to back up the talk, to say, listen, we know what is going on and something should be done, something must be done. And we are doing what we think is necessary at this point. And to go forward, coming up with these reasons, coming up with these tools. Tell us.
Yes, man. We are people, right? So the movement is all about environmental, social, right, and economic justice, right? So from here is that we would like legislation to be changed so Jamaicans have general and unfettered rights of access to beaches and rivers, right? Would like the entire coastline around Jamaica to be designated public land that Jamaicans can freely access and use. Would like the space to be zoned, so we are pushing for a zoning of the coastline, so you have zones that you can have commercial interests operating, but they can't own these lands. These land must be held in trust for the Jamaican people, so they operate on a lease space. So we have a plan that we are going to roll out as to what the legislation of the coastline should look like. But what are we doing in the interim is that we are protecting beaches that comes under attack by a tourism industry, by the government, by other private interests that tries to displace the Jamaican people. So we are using the Prescription Act of 1882, that is basically a piece of land rights registrations that says if we've been using a beach, a river, a lagoon, a piece of wetland for a minimum of 20 years, no one has given us any permission to do so. Customary rights, customary usage, we have the right to continue to do so forever, but we have to prove that in the court. So we have dragged now 5 cases in the courts, and we have many more to pull. We have a couple lining up to roll out this year as well. So the 5 cases in the are the Beach, Duns River, the Blue Lagoon, Bob Marley Beach, and the most recent addition is the Providence Flanker Beach in Montego Bay. And so what these cases are aiming to do is to protect the rights of the communities to continue to use these spaces for fishing, for recreation, for their religious events, for all kind of therapeutic, for whatever communities or whatever the Jamaican people have been using these beaches for. We have brought these cases before the court, and asking the court to look at this evidence, and demonstrating to the court that Jamaican people have been using these spaces for more than 20 years. And so under Jamaican law, the court must grant us that land rights so we can still traverse those lands and really use the beach, right, for what we have been using it for. So we are doing that, right? I mean, we are also engaging in, the advocacy and the education to show Jamaican people how the Beach Control Act of 1956 is a legislation that, while it is law in Jamaica, it is law that is violent towards the Jamaican people. It is law that actually risks, right? So we are breaking the law down and showing the sections of this law through, education events that we have, out there to let the Jamaican people understand that you now have to engage your political class, right? And we are doing this kind of activism on the ground, which is not a partisan activism around side political party, but saying that this fight. So we have to bring the pressure on the system, feels it, right? And that is, a long struggle, a long battle, right? But the education is necessary to really now mobilize the people against laws that are not in their best interest, right? So that is a longer struggle. The legal struggle is continuing. We're going to diversify the legal struggle in many ways. And I could tell you one of the ways that we are in the legal struggle. Now, your audience and most of the Jamaican people have heard us talk about, the fight for fishermen, right? Just to the beach to kind of, continue fishing, or for vendors, or for beach goers, mama and grandma, who go down to go kind of wash them foot in the water and, look a picnic splashing at the sea, and everybody feeling good on a holiday. With some of these places, they can't do it anymore. I know the community of Steertown, right? Marmot Bay, Airport, Davistown, in and around St. Anne's Bay and Ochi can no longer access Marmot Bay Beach. So that taken away from them. What is emerging in Jamaica now is what we're seeing as the end of the sea. That we are losing the sea because a new trend in the Jamaican plantation tourism model, where they are now building sea. So there are 3 of those hotel rooms that are built in the sea. We have in White House, we have a Princess Sensington Mangrove in Hanover, and we have another Sandals in Montego Bay. And then there are 2 pending EIA for 2 more. And then we also have Moon Palace that is building, what they call a township, and in Success in Montego Bay, now projecting to also build overwater bungalows. So the proliferation there is saying that, we also have one coming up in Paradise Pen in Westmoreland as well. So you can see the trend that is not only now building on the coastline, which they built too close to the sea already, now in the sea, right? Building in the sea. So some of these establishments are taking 10 years. And what we have, you have a question, Rattigan, because I want to make what we have done in the court for Providence Flanker is that we have filed for the rights, prescribed rights to parts of the sea. Never before, right, have we got to. Can't hear you.
Still me on the mix up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. We have a malfunctioning system here, but as I promised you when we started, in a few weeks, change. Trust me. The question I want to ask you said that there's a proliferation of construction over water. Now, my understanding is that once you start going out in the sea, that's crown land. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Who owns the sea in Jamaica? Who owns the can you build legally and constitutionally build over the sea?
In the sea.
It's under what?
Yeah. So under what them call the United Nations and the laws of the sea, 12 miles from the high water mark is considered sovereign land for any nation that them can do what they want to unite. Right?
Okay.
Now Jamaica just ratified the beyond biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, which basically protect the high seas. Now, we can come on and we can do a whole section on just the laws of the seas, right? Because I think Jamaica needs to start understand that, right? As it relates to our rights in our water, or our economic rights in the sea. Because when the government now allow a hotel to get 10 acres of sea, right? which under the law they can do so. But we can also talk about that Jamaica have regulation. And yeah, he's a very skillful attorney, and I know that, right? No regulations about building in the state. What have is a guideline. And you not know that guidelines are not, you can't prosecute if somebody violates something, do something wrong in the guideline, right? Him get away with that. Him create murder in the sea, which is happening right now. Is ecocide. Them taking out 10-acre grass bed, destroying habitats on the floor of the sea that support very endangered species in Jamaican water, right? We know that the grass beds are very important for integrity of the sand, right? Integrity of the coastline and protection of species that lives in our reef. But our government have allowed building in the sea that is doing all of that desecration under the sea, all right? And so they're doing all of that on a 2016 guideline, Rattigan, you know, and Kevin. We don't have relation, and we have not heard from the political side that says, oh, hold on, you know, you can't continue to allow overwater bungalow to be built on the guidelines. We need strong regulations that would protect the integrity of our ecosystem, but that don't exist in Jamaica. So these hotels are built upon guidelines in crown waters. And so they're transferring, right? In property. You're transferring water, land underwater to private interests. And you know, so when a man put millions of dollars they take to build these things in the sea, it can beach license that my Jamaican people are revocable every year, renew your beach license. Now, when you build your hotel in the sea, you can't tell a man to go what, you know. So they might give them big, many years. And if I understand it correctly, they're getting 5-year lease states. Now, this is what's unfolding in Jamaica, and there are around 5 more of these projects now on the books to be built out. You can't go back in them spaces there. You can't swim in them. Your boat can't drive in them. You can't. They're heavily policed, heavily controlled. So you are giving the sea. So the fight has to go into the water. And that's why last filing, we have filed to protect this area that is off the coastline, where the fishermen them use it to move up along, because they have lost the one that is where Sanders, is built. So it's a very serious, happening in Jamaica with things, to the people. And we're asking you, don't just sit down and just say, boy, we can't do nothing about it. This is why when we file in court cases here, we like you to show up at the courthouse, because this is one of the ways you can help to show that you are for the struggle and the fight to protect and protect people. Just imagine a proliferation across the entire North Coast of everything in the sea. You can't go out there. So if you want to go up on your paddle board, you can't. They've already criminalized fishing already, and I create, while I am a conservationist, right? There's these fish sanctuaries that are being built in Jamaica, right? That is commandeering big swaths of the coastline that is blocking out fishing and saying that you can't fish anymore because reef fish are on the strain, and we understand that. But they put the blame on the fishermen them. So the fishermen them fish out all of the fish them out of the reef. That cannot be true. We, the hotel industry, have built on our beaches, remove the grass bed, right? We know the runoff from the hotels that goes into the sea. And we know that, and it's been historical, that show from Jamaica product was coming when the kind of sunscreens that were used that were also harmful to marine life. The removal of mangroves. We see in Hanover, them, when in Green Island, them took out acres of it. Right, we have seen it. It's going to happen in Flanker. We see it happen across Jamaica, and they put the blame on the fishing community. Say the fishing community is what is destroying reef fishing in Jamaica. No, the hotel industry have a role to play there, and the government is doing all these things. Saying we have to build sanctuaries. Displace the Jamaican people. It is. We have to really have this real discussion. You can't blame poor people for not destruction and a fish in a Jamaica, and a poor people cause it. A government and them big elite them cause it. Kingston was the most beautiful harbor in the entire world. And it's the government and how it manages its disposal of its waste that does it. And it also allows all these crap in them factories and Kingston, I mean, in the vicinity of the harbor that create this kind of problem. All of these runoff, we see them thinking happening at the Raya Kobe. Stop blaming poor people. It's something that really angers me when intellectuals, right, who know better, cannot put the blame on poor people for say fishermen catch off all of this fish them in the reef, and hotel industry and big corporation have nothing to do with the decrease in fish at the reefs.
Watch your brethren. Time is at a premium. We soon forgot we have a few minutes on to do. I want switch your train of thought now. North Coast. As you said, that coast is basically it's gone, right? Big business. And we see now where there's a to the South Coast. And we hear plans. I want you to shift the thought process. What's going on South Coast of Jamaica?
Hold on, a lot of what is said, and I've been reading the comments. Some of the people saying, "Boy, a lot of what you're saying is true, is facts, is what we need to know that people hate." So let's go to the basics. Let's dial back years. When they were fine, and we would see a lot of tourists going to hotels like House Wyndham, and then they would leave these excursions to these places that used to have, or other. But what was the thing drive tourists, which is anybody that don't live in a particular area, for actions? So what was it that drove away from doing things like that as it was back then to how it is done now, where they're putting these hotels on these beaches, these very same beaches that tourists used to come here so that they can pristine nature, the natural nature of these beaches. Some hotels. So push from there now and to the South Coast.
Yeah, the all inclusive tourism, or the capital concentrate wealth. You come up with a product, and how do I get more out of this product? How do I control more? Because a tourist might go in a craft village in Ocherius, or along Fern Gully, or to Kingston Market and craft market and buy things. So, but if I now control all of that on my premise, I now control all of that kind of money that the tourist is going to spend. So I mean, it's a move to all-inclusive model that they develop at the capital money, right? Control all of it. So now them control the transportation. So Juta drivers, where you would come to Jamaica, you walk out of the airport, say, "Oh, I'm going to Arawak Inn," right? And him take a taxi, and your mother, father, granny, brother make a money. The hotel now control that, right? The tours them that you would take a taxi going to Ocherius or Mobile, engage people, find out where to go, and move around the country freely, right? The general public would be making money. The capitalist says, "No, me want all of this," because capitalism work, right? It's a concentration of wealth. They want to make more, so them re-engineer their products, so they make everything off of it. So now them control everything. All the restaurants now, you're going to these places, them have Thai restaurants, Jamaican restaurants, Indian restaurants, Mediterranean restaurants. All of these restaurants are now built in the hotel. So you don't have those restaurants that were on land that our brothers and sisters were operating, that they would access them anymore. The product and everything about the product is concentrated on one site, so they can make more money, because that's what it is. They will take everything from you. So the model was switched, and it has been raised to say that Jamaican society was unsafe and it's the violence in the society. So we need to protect the tourists and lock them behind these gated walls, right? But what is the Jamaican tourism product? It is people, and it's the beauty of its land and an experience. So you could not have been actually exposing them to the real product of tourism, right? You know, you are caging them for a limited experience, right? So you are, as a tourist that comes and stay in all-inclusive spaces, you're denied the true experience of the Jamaican people and the land itself. So the idea, I don't think, was one of a security concern. It was more of the concentration of wealth to be controlled by the industry, so them control everything. The food distribution, all of it bought overseas, shipped into Jamaica. They import also labor. The highest level of top management are not coming from our population, but they are imported. So the whole model has always been built around the need to control the money, the wealth, and whoever control the money and the wealth control the influence on the political class, that them get the legislation that them want, them get the bills that them want, them get everything. So it is the same way as to the colonial structure, as to how the elite control things. Centralization of power, centralization of wealth in a few people. And I hate that. And what we see now, if we can, so Kevin, we're good with that, we can now springboard over to central debt, all right? And I hope your listeners them can get the reason why we are fight for what now to really kind of mash down this kind of all-inclusive model to be replaced by something that is community-based. So you can truly benefit from the tourism product, right? But not only, you know, just economically, but you will also have access to your beaches, right? Your fisherman, them and your family who are fisher folks can still go and use the sea, right? To really kind of, you know, provide substance for them family, because believe it or not, the sea is the food in Jamaica. We don't have no forest with no rabbit and no deer and no woolly and nothing around down we can go catch, right? A sea is the space in which we can go catch fish, you know, and seaweed. So when I heard about the whole argument to move St. Elizabeth, move Black River, right? You know, because Black River is not just, you know, that we experience, because I've visited Black River and I've seen the devastation along the coastline. So it was serious, right? It was a lot of damage there, you know, to property, and I'm not sure how many people who have lost their lives within the Black River, you know, Westmoreland kind of, you know, hurricane hardest hit area, right? But we know the history of Black River, you know, I mean, and I've been refreshing myself on some of the important things about Black River. At one point, you know, rival Kingstown as, you know, being a space of some of the most commercial activities that goes on there, right? Black River, you know, was one of the first place that got electricity in Jamaica. First place that got telephone, you know, pipe water, right? These things are very important things. So Black River is a very, very highly historical town. It's also, you know, the space in which there are many slave ports in Jamaica. A lot of them have not been preserved. But one of the slave ports that slave came in Black River is preserved. And one of the important things, and you know, Professor Varian Shepherd was on the program here that talked about the Zang massacre, you know, which is a massacre that happened at sea, where enslaved Africans, you know, of course, were treated as cargo, and the ship ran into problems that they couldn't, support the enslaved Africans on board, and them throw them over in the water and kill off the whole of them, right, in order to really save them shipment. And this Zang massacre, that ship came into Black River. There's a memorial that is in Black River commemorating the Zang and the story of the Zang, the tragedy of what our descendants faced, right? And that also led and was part of the whole abolition movement about the emancipation of enslaved Africans. So Black River has high significance in the history. Not only that, is that the town sits right on the largest freshwater wetland in the Caribbean, which is the Black River. So, I mean, it's a very, very important thing to the ecology of the country, the history of our traumatic past as it relates to chattel slavery. I mean, many of the first in water, telephone, and, you know, electricity, Black River is renowned for that. So it's a very historical town that you can't just get up one day and say, boy, you're going to move this thing inland without proper, you know, consultation, you know, proper engagement, not only of people who live in St. Elizabeth, but also of the entire country because of the importance of it. And what this is disaster capitalism. Disaster capitalism, when there is a disaster that unfolds in a country, you normally have the political elite, right? And, the capitalists really capitalize on these kind of events that now, because people are in shock, people dispossess them, don't know where to turn. You capitalize on this in terms of displacing them from the space to now take over the land. So some of the first people them who rushed to say, yeah, let's move river was the tourism industry, because they stand to benefit. Because if you move all these people, the whole place now becomes what? Ripe for tourism development and mecca, right? And that is how capitalism works in its disaster context. And so we have a lot of concern that we need to unpack as it relates to making sure that we protect Black River for what it meant to the trauma of Jamaica past, but also the future of the country, where we know that, the biggest fresh water, and body of fresh water sits right there at the Black River. It's a huge habitat. Walipa national crocodiles in there. Walipa tours goes up in the Black River. The wetland is very, rich, and we need to protect these things because coastal forests are very important for the protection of the Jamaican people. So, after today, you're still up on mute.
See, yeah, the problem with the system. Hey, Doc, listen, I can't get tired of listening to you because you make me smarter every single time I listen to you talk. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of the people listening. And I see we're in the chat, somebody says, thanks guys for dropping history, facts, and truth to power. And they're referring to you, I'm sure, because you have a clue, and you're just giving us, dropped some knowledge. And I'd love for you to have you, if you can come back next week, because we just touched the tip of Black River, and there are some other things I want to talk to you about, some environmental issues. There are some things going on in Kingston Hall. There's some other that.
I'd like here, and I'm still, you're raising the Kingston to come back next year. One of our
next year you have to come back.
No.
Next year.
Yes, one of our environmental defender who has been very instrumental in the fight to protect us in the Kingston Harbor, right? And to protect the fishing community there from a lot of the activities that are going on that can ruin fishing in the Kingston Harbor, the biggest in Jamaica, is missing. Right, and he's been missing since the 4th of January, that Mr. Winston Monroe. And, I'm still gathering all the facts around it that we are unable to locate him. He's the president of the Greenwich Farm Fisher Association. He's our JaBBEM lead in the Kingston area. And it's very troubling right now that we are unable to locate him for such a long time. And it's one of the things that, we're not really making any accusation right now to understand the fight of Mr. Monroe to protect fishers and to safeguard the community in and around Kingston from what's unfolding as they dredge the Kingston Harbor, right? And his fight to protect the continuation of fishing. But Mr. Winston Monroe has been missing, and I had a significant meeting with him over the holidays as we plan as to our activities and projects that we're going to embark upon. So, the entire listening audience to know if they have seen or heard. I'm putting a post together now to get out we'll share with you, but we'll come back and we could talk about some of the work that he has been doing and see if we could really kind of ignite the nation to help us to locate him.
All right. Let's link up tomorrow, and then you can talk about this, because I may have, I'm in a position to set out some leads, and then we can go from that and until next week. Then, you forward and we deal with the other issue. So I want to thank here, my brother, as always, and just continue the fight. Know that we're 100%, and with the support and with the strength and the assistance of everyone, including the Almighty, we will prevail. It may be long, but thank you for showing up, my brother.
Give time.